Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Hockey Writers podcast here on the YouTube channel, our YouTube edition, continuing our 2022-2023 season preview shows here. I've got my co-host Kyle Knopp, as always, and Mariah Holland-Stark, who covers the Minnesota Wild. So obviously, we're going to do the Minnesota Wild on this episode and going to dive into all this stuff. If you've watched the first two of our season preview shows, we're going to dive into the forwards, defense, goaltending, and a whole bunch of other stuff to set everyone up for the hockey season coming up in about a month and a half. So, Mariah, thanks for coming on. And how's it going?
The Wild have made some waves this week, small ones, but some. So there's at least things to discuss other than the last few weeks where it's just been quiet.
Yeah. There's been a lot of teams that have been quiet quite a bit. So it's
summertime.
It's summer. We're getting into it September 1st when we're recording this. That is. Yeah. But whenever you watch this, may watch it day before the season starts. Who knows? But thanks for joining us on another preview show. And we're just going to get started here and get into the forwards. To set this up, I mean, the Minnesota Wild made the playoffs last year. Got eliminated pretty early on when they thought a pretty strong team. Had Marc-Andre Fleury there. He's still there. But they didn't really make any much moves forward-wise. I mean, they did trade away Kevin Fiala, who we'll talk about. But they did just acquire a forward, who we're going to talk about first, is Sam Steele. He signed 1-year deal coming off a year with the Anaheim Ducks. He was a prospect there a while ago, I guess. But first-round pick. But 1-year deal now with the Minnesota Wild. So let's start there, Mariah and Sam Steele. What do you think about this addition? I mean, he's not going to be a massive guy. I mean, you wouldn't think. I mean, he may. You never know. But what do you think about the signing and the addition of Steele?
So I'll be honest. When I first read it, I was like, who is this guy? But then I'm actually, spoiler alert, I'm working on an article on it that I actually did some research to see who he is. And he's actually been with Anaheim for the last 4 years and kind of up and down, but he's a pretty consistent scorer. He's had 6 goals every season. Never up or down from that. His assists have, but
consistency.
Yeah. I mean, it would be great if he'd do that and a little more with us, but I mean, last season he had 20 points and a few on the power play as well, which is good because the Wild are going to need somebody to be on the power play after Fiala's gone. I haven't seen a lot of him. I watched a little bit of his highlights, and he's an interesting goal scorer. He always seems to be able to find the holes and where to be. And the Wild were victims of his, I believe it was last season. I saw a highlight. I don't know what season it was from, but I'm pretty sure it was last season of him scoring on us as well. So hopefully he can do that to the Ducks now. But I mean, I think he'll fit in on the third or fourth line because Jordan Greenway's supposedly going to miss the beginning of the season after having surgery. So they might slide him in there, or they might experiment on the fourth line. I don't know. It's so their lines are so jumbled other than like the first one. Like that's staying the same. And I could see him maybe going on the fourth line and bumping, if Rossi comes up, bumping him to third, or just seeing how it works out. It's, like I said, it's going to be a lot of line combinations, but at least they have a lot of people to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I always liked Sam Steele in Anaheim. I thought he kind of didn't really find his role there with the team, but he's a grinder, and he's one of those third line energy guys that I think could bring a pretty good presence to Minnesota as well, which is always fun because they're a fun team to watch. Minnesota's a fun team to watch. Now, the one big wave, Matt already mentioned it. It was the wave going the wrong direction this summer. Kevin Fiala. We got to talk about this. They only got a prospect in return for him. So who is going to fill that 33-goal, 85-point void that he is leaving this season?
So unlike a lot of fans, I was okay with this. And I'm a huge fan of Faber, so I like that they got him.
Yeah.
But I had to think about this one a little bit, but I'm going to say Zuccarello because he just missed out on 30 goals last season, and he was only 6 points behind Fiala, surprisingly. I knew he had a lot of points. I didn't realize he was that close. And I mean, being on a line with Kaprizov and should be Hartman still. We'll see what happens there, but he's gonna score goals, and I think he'll push because he's gonna want to beat what he did last season. He's that type of player like Kaprizov where they make each other better. So I think Zuccarello could do it.
Like it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Zuccarello, he's an interesting player. I mean, I've always liked how he plays, and I
love
think
him.
I think he's going to probably fill it. But the thing is, like you said, he's pretty close to points in Fiala, so he's really not replacing his numbers. They're still going to need someone to give that, right? Yeah. But I can see him stepping into that type of role that I guess Fiala had, and get more responsibility if he had enough already. I don't know, but you know, but we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how they kind of adjust, because that's a massive hole. And he had such a good season last year too. But he was going to cost a lot of money for what he did too, right? Yeah. So LA's got a really good player
for them. It's in there.
Yeah, right. But there is a guy that I think could potentially, maybe not this year, but in the future. This is another prospect I really liked when he was drafted, is Marco Rossi. He played only a few games, had a bit of a cup of coffee with the Wild. He was played most of his year in the Iowa Wild, who's the minor league hockey team for the Minnesota Wild. I hate when teams have the same names.
I know, really, it makes it so hard.
But what do you think about Marco Rossi's chances of having full-time NHL employment this year?
I think it's pretty good. I think, you know, I'm missing out on my words here. He did his time last season. That's what I was looking for. I mean, he bumped up a little bit, but then Boldy just went, and Rossi they just decided to drop him back down, which probably was for the better, so he could get a little bit more comfortable and be ready to make that jump this year. And I think he'll be up full time. It's just finding that spot, and maybe he could they switched the second line around, and maybe he could center Fiala's line, and Boudreau could move to wing. There's so many possibilities with that line because they jumbled wings and centers all the time. And I mean, I think he'll find a spot. It might take a little bit at the beginning because Guerin's going to want him to earn it, but we'll see. I think he does. And I think he'll do well. He seems pretty adjusted.
Yeah.
He's another young guy, another energy guy that just makes this team so much fun to watch. So I hope he does, because when his brief flashes, he's one of those dynamic guys that could have a lot of impact on this team. All right. Well, you know, we have to talk about him. Kirill the Thrill. Is he going to continue to be a 100-point player in 2022-23, or will he have a little bit of a regress this season?
Of course he's going to keep going. He doesn't know the word regression. That's not it, because everyone's like, oh, he's going to do his sophomore slump, and he went and did 108 points. So, no. And I could totally be like, okay, maybe it's his third year slump, but I think he's so hungry. He wants to get there. He's just going to keep going and going and going. As long as he is able to stay healthy and people stay away from him, he will do it. And he's pretty feisty, so he can defend himself pretty well. But I mean, they found out last year you don't touch him, because I mean, Hartman will come after you. So I think he does well. I think he even scores more than he did this year.
Okay.
Yeah. Kaprizov's that exciting. Like, we talk about exciting players. He's probably one. Like, well, he's a reason he's called Kirill the Thrill.
Yeah. Oh yeah, right.
Or Dollar Bill. I mean, he's got multiple.
He's an exciting player, and the thing is, like, the Wild haven't had this. I've said this before. The Wild haven't had an exciting guy like that since Marian Gaborik, probably. Oh, and if Gaborik, I still say, if Gaborik was playing under a more offensive style, he would have been a 100-point player multiple years, because he'd put up 70 plus points on a team that never played offense.
Yeah.
Jacques Lemaire being the coach. There's no offense. So I think he's going to be a 100-point player again too. He just has just has that, we could say X factor. He has that X factor that he's like Ovechkin. You can't stop a guy like that.
He's got that drive that just
he'll do
out of his way.
Yeah, he'll do it. And again, he's Russian, right? So
yes, he is.
Or Belarusian. Always went on a mission. Yeah. So I mean, he's really, let's say he's exciting. He's an exciting player to watch, and probably the best to play in this type of NHL right now too.
Because it's fit for
based
his
on
style
speed.
Of play.
Yeah. So you talked about Ryan Hartman there. Hartman had a great season. He didn't hit double digits before last year. He had 30. He was a 30 goal scorer. Is that something we're going to expect from him now, or is this just a flash in the pan? I know that's been it's happened. Guys have had 30 goal seasons and then they go away. Is that Hartman, or is he just broken through as a 30 goal scorer, and is he now a legitimate top line player?
Oh, so I have two answers for this, because I'm a big fan of his. I like how he plays. He's very fun to watch too. He's a little different than Kaprizov, obviously. The skill's just a little different, respectfully. But he's got an edge that he's fun to watch because he's just so edgy with everything. But if he stays on that top line, I think he can do that again, because he has Zuccarello and Kaprizov both feed him the puck all the time. He knows where to be. He's always in front of the net. He's getting in the way. He's there. If they move him, I don't know. I mean, he's talented, he is, but I just don't know if he can get that 30 goal mark again without being on that line, just because they worked so well together and the chemistry was, they were passing when you didn't even know there was a pass there. So if he stays, yes. If he drops down to a different line, I don't know.
I think that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment for him. He's got, playing with those two guys on that top line, that's a lot of weapons at his disposal. So, like you said, just crash the net and hope for good things.
Yeah.
All right, Mariah, what is the biggest storyline or question mark for the Minnesota Wild going into the 2022-23 season?
Goaltending and special teams. I had two, because I wrote goaltending and then I'm like, I have to add to this because our special teams were so bad last year.
Well, let's touch on the special teams now, because we'll ask you the same question when we work with the goaltending, so then you can bring it up.
Oh, I mean, it was such a roller coaster last year. They do so well and then they just disappear, and their penalty kill was like, I talked to a lot of people about this, including my coworkers at my day job. I was like, and one of them didn't believe me. I was like, you go back and watch the videos of the goals they let in on the penalty kill, and they always forget the extra forward down by the net, like right there. And I'm like, I understand that's the point of like the person's power play, you sneak behind, but the penalty kill should know to clear those guys out. You let the top guys get in the way. And then my coworker comes back and goes, I watched it and you were right. And I'm like, I told you. I'm not an NHL coach, but I told you. I've seen this happen too many times.
I love it.
So they need to fix that.
All right.
Yeah. Well, special teams wins and loses a lot of games in the NHL, and that's just the point. I mean, there's so many times watching the Canucks and any team for that matter, you watch, and most games are decided by special teams. A lot of them are. I mean, you don't score on the power play, you can't kill a penalty, you're probably going to lose.
I mean, coaches always say, if you win the special team battle, you're likely going to win the game.
Yeah. So I mean, it's huge, it's massive. So that's a definite big storyline going into the season for the Wild. Fix the special team, especially the penalty kill. So that's their biggest job going in. So let's talk about the rest of the division. I mean, the Wild are in a pretty tough division. They don't have to deal with the Chicago Blackhawks being a tough team anymore, at least not right now. How does this forward group match up with the rest of the groups in the Central Division?
I think they match up pretty well. They have a lot of scoring power. They just have to get it to start a little sooner than it did last year. I mean, they had a great season. I can't really be mad because they had a great season, regular season, a lot of scoring, most scoring I think they've ever had in a year.
Yeah.
But it needs to start a little sooner so they can build up points a little sooner and not be so close at the end. That drove me nuts. But I mean, like the Blues, they match up pretty well. I would say, I mean, we did okay against the Avalanche. I mean, we beat them once, twice. I don't remember for sure the stats there. I know we beat at least once. But I mean, I think they, like I said, they have a lot of scoring power. I think they do match up well. It's just they gotta get the scoring going sooner.
I mean, yeah, most teams would like to get those quicker goals, quick leads into the game, and then they can protect them, right? I mean, that's what most coaches like you to do, come out with, urgency. And if you get those quick goals, you can kind of protect the lead. So let's talk about protecting the lead. And that comes from your defense. So what are your expectations, Mariah, of the defense for the Minnesota Wild this upcoming season?
Oh boy. I mean, they still have their core. Yeah, we'll obviously talk about this in a little bit, but they traded Kulikov, which that was kind of bound to happen because they had so many defense already. And they have one that's ready to come up too. I have high expectations. I mean, they still have Brodin, Spurgeon, Merrill, Middleton, all these guys that are really good. They just really need to focus and make sure they're blocking more shots and doing that stuff. I mean, I had another thought just go, but like they had a lot of scoring too from Brodin and Spurgeon especially, and that needs to happen again because that was a big boost to them. But they also have to remember to block a lot of shots and help their goaltender, especially this season, because their goaltenders are going to need help.
Yeah, well, and that's a big part of their game is the blocking. I know a couple of just reading your articles. I learned a lot about the Wild. So, and you mentioned that a lot. The blocking the shots, and a lot of guys did do that job. So we'll see if they can continue that because the Wild are really good in both defense and offense last year. So we'll see how that all plays out. But there is a guy. I want to talk about this guy because he has been talked about in trade rumors and stuff like that. Matt Dumba. He is a pretty big part of the Wild still. I mean, his money is pretty high still. Do you think he gets traded this year? Do those trade rumors actually come of anything this year?
I want to say no, because before the season starts, like now, no. Because he's had injury problems. It was a struggle all season it was just, is he in? No, he's not. He's back for a game and then he disappears again. And that sounds horrible because you never want a player injured, but it was bad last year. And then the poor guy ends up with like a punctured lung and all of this stuff for playoffs. And it's like, you just need like a 6-month vacation. Just heal and figure something out. If he starts scoring, like playing like he did, I had this in an article. If he does, if he can replicate what he did 5 years ago before he got injured from the fight with Tkachuk, that's when he played the best. He had, I think, 80 some point. That seems high. He had a lot of points. I don't remember how many, but he had a lot of points. He looked great. That's when all this hype started. And if he can find that form again, I don't know if he can. I think people start asking about him and potentially wanting him. But I mean, the Wild would want to trade him because they're probably realistically they're not going to re-sign him at that amount after the season, unless he is a miracle player, and even then they can't really afford that. So they're going to want to get at least something for him because he is a decent player, but he just struggles with that. So I don't know if a team would really be willing to give up a lot, but I mean, at least even a prospect or two would be better than just letting him go to free agency.
Yeah.
And best case scenario, go ahead.
Well, the last time Dumba had he had 50 points. 50.
That's what it was.
And that was the last time he played 82 games too. So
I was like, I thought 80 seemed kind of high.
Well, and if he does have, that big season, like you say, that miracle season, that would just increase his trade value at the deadline, because the Wild aren't going to be able to afford him, so they might be able to flip him for someone else at a little lower cost. So always nice to have that in your back pocket when someone about to go into free agency is having a big year. All right. Well, speaking of trades and rumors, we got a real trade to talk about that you just kind of mentioned, but the Wild traded Dmitri Kulikov for future considerations. Give us your thoughts and feelings on that trade.
Again, I'm happy about it because I predicted it.
Tell us how you really feel.
He's a great person, great player. He was a great role model for Kaprizov to have, especially since they're both from Russia. That kind of made the transition easier. Mm-hmm. But the Wild just couldn't fit him in anymore. He was kind of up and down, and they just can't afford a player like that. And he's gonna do, I think, better in Anaheim. Like, I talked to Brooke from Chicago's Blackhawks team, and she even said, she's like, he'll have a much easier or better time there. He'll be able to maybe take more of a leadership role too, and just fit in better. And it's nothing he did wrong. He just, sometimes they aren't a good fit.
Yeah.
And as far as like what they got for him, they can keep stockpiling their draft picks or whatever prospects, whatever they get for it.
There you go. Add to the pipeline.
Yes,
whatever that future consideration.
Yeah, right.
Whatever that future considerations actually ends up being.
Yeah. Who knows?
Kulikov had a really good season. I remember the last time I'd watched. He had a really good season in he played for Atlanta Thrashers way back when.
Oh my gosh.
And
he might be one of the final remaining players from those teams.
Yeah.
Oh, he needs to keep playing then.
Yeah, I think he may actually be, because I'm trying to think of anyone else that's still in the league, and because Brian Little is hurt and he may not even play in the NHL anymore. And he's still on the payroll of the Winnipeg Jets, but he's on LTIR for like the last couple seasons.
Yeah,
I don't think there is anyone else. OG Atlanta Thrashers. Oh, Blake Wheeler played for the Thrashers, I think, last season.
Oh. You might be right. Like, that might have been his very, very first season.
The last season of the Thrashers.
So long ago.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's the last time I remember Kulikov being really, really good. I know he's been pretty solid, like places he's been, but I think he was like a really highly touted defenseman in like Atlanta and towards maybe beginning of Winnipeg. I think he was playing for Winnipeg too for a bit, but he's still a good defenseman in the league. I mean, I think he can really help whatever team, any team really. I think he can help. That's why when you said he'd probably be traded, I think I'd see him being traded and still being a pretty good guy on wherever he goes. So we'll see how it goes with him. But it opens up space for other guys to play. So one guy, I didn't add this to here, but I know you know about him, is Calen Addison. What do you think about his chances? I'm throwing curveball. What do you think about Calen Addison's chances to make the team now and play a big role on the defense?
I have been wanting to talk about him because I am a huge fan of his, and I don't know how it's gonna go, because when Kulikov was still last season, they were bouncing Goligoski and Kulikov back and forth in games because they had Middleton and they had their 6 and they had an extra person. So now with Kulikov gone, they have their 6. So Addison would be the odd guy out unless they like maybe bounce him with Goligoski, because I think Merrill's possibly out as well with surgery. They I don't even know what timeline. They just say possibly out right now. So this could all change before the season. But if he's out, I could see them putting Addison in. And he's a great player, and I was hoping he was going to make the roster last year, and I was really bummed he didn't. He's really good. And I mean, he's not, like scoring because he's defense, but he does block shots. He gets in there. He's not afraid to get in the way.
Yeah.
And he's fast.
All right. So let's talk about this defense as a whole right now. how does this defensive core match up with the other teams in the Central? Where would you rank them?
Middle
of the pack.
Yeah. They're good, but they have things they can improve on as always, and maybe upper middle. I guess I could be a little bit more generous because they do score quite a few goals too.
All right.
I'm more harsh on the defense. I don't know if that's
they
because I
got a
was
pretty
a
good
forward,
group.
but
Yeah. I don't know. I think they have a pretty good group. I really like Jared Spurgeon. I've always liked him as a defenseman.
I like Spurgeon,
because of
everybody
I mean,
likes
I
him.
love undersized guys getting being stars in the league. So he's been really good and well deserved of being captain.
Oh yeah,
he's good. Okay, let's talk about the goaltending, which Cam Talbot's not there anymore. Kind of thought they were going to go and run a tandem between Marc-Andre Fleury and Cam Talbot once Fleury was re-signed. But now Fleury's the starter. Gustafsson is okay. He's not going to play a lot of big role. But do you think Fleury's going to have to play the majority of the games for this team to make the playoffs?
Yeah, my bubble burst when Talbot left. I was so looking forward to that. But honestly, I think they put Gustafsson in early just to see how he does, and that will determine if Fleury plays majority of the season or not. I think he will, just because nothing, like, respectfully to Gustafsson, like we've talked about before many times, he's still newish. He's not a veteran goalie yet.
Yeah.
He's not ready for this situation, so to speak. I mean, he's been a backup and that's great, but the Wild are a bit more of a, can I say more of a step up than Ottawa? I don't know. I don't want to be rude to Ottawa because they are.
It's only if they will back that up.
Yeah.
Because Ottawa's a good team as well. But
yeah.
All respect to them. But I think, yeah, it's going to be a whole different situation. And I mean, Gustafsson has a great mentor in Fleury.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Fleury, even in his interviews, he was looking forward to not playing every game because that's really hard on his body at 37, 38 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in impeccable shape. I mean, ridiculously, and he plays great, but he was looking forward to like 50-50 and you always have a fresh goalie, and that's just not realistically, that's not going to happen this season.
And you kind of saw that happen to him in Chicago at the start of last season a bit too. So and we all kind of saw where that went. So I think hopefully Gustafsson has a good start to the season so he can come in and be relied on a little more, so Fleury can get some rest. But that brings me to another goaltender, and that's top prospect Jesper Wallstedt. And will he play a role in this season at some point? What are your thoughts on that?
If things get really bad or someone gets injured, I could see them bringing him up. Nothing against him not coming up, I should say, but he's got to get a little time in with Iowa first, just kind of to adjust, because everyone's saying, oh, he should have been on the team last year, and it's like, well, goalies take time to adjust, and they need that time. It's unfair to throw them into that. Yeah. Even if he's the greatest goaltender in the world, that's still an unfair thing to do. So I think if he can get some time in Iowa, maybe if things really start to fall, then I could see them trying it just as hopes, but they don't want to rush him either. So I'm kind of hoping not to see him so he can be ready to go next season. But if things have to do it, he'll come up. I don't know.
Well, I think Wallstedt is going to be, like, just spoiler alert I updated the goaltending prospects top 10. Wallsted's number 1. So and Kosa was drafted ahead of him. Yeah, Wallsted's in my mind, the best goaltending prospect out there right now.
I agree.
Yeah.
So we talked about this a ton on the grind line.
We've talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I do agree. I think he shouldn't be rushed in because we've seen, I mean, Carey Price is an exceptional talent, but I really thought he struggled in his first year when he was brought in at 19. And, and then Halak, I think it was Halak that was traded, or Hue, it was one of the two that was traded away. And they just gave him the starting role at like 20 years old. And I still thought he struggled in his first couple seasons. And obviously he turned out okay. But the thing is, Wallstedt has the pedigree to be an elite starter in this league. And I think he will eventually be that, but you don't want to rush him, especially he's coming over from Europe. He's not used to the pace of the NHL game. He needs some time in the AHL, like you said. So
you don't want to get him hurt.
You don't want him to get hurt either. So ideally, he plays a full season down there, comes up next season, which is exactly what I said in the article. I said that ideally he plays 2023-24. Or no, I said after Marc-Andre Fleury's contract's over is when he'll be
2 years
ready. So which is 2 years. So I love Wallstedt's potential. So he's going to be exciting to watch and in the NHL. So we'll see. And he already showed it at Team Sweden and the competitive fire he's got. Jeez. I mean, saying you put down, let down your country after losing a game in a preliminary round.
Yeah, that wasn't even his fault.
Yeah. So you can tell how competitive this guy is. So we'll see. It's gonna be exciting. Okay, let's talk about the overall goaltending of how it matches up in the Central Division. So basically, they have a starter, but an unproven backup. So how do you think they match up?
This is nothing against Fleury when I say this, because he's a great goalie, but not great, because that's a lot of pressure. And I mean, can I take that back? I should say okay, because Fleury is Fleury, but with Gustafsson, I don't know how to say his last name. As a backup, I don't know. I mean, Fleury, I want to say it's great just because it's Fleury and everybody loves him. I don't know anybody that doesn't love him, but that's just, I mean, playing every single game is going to take a toll on him. And unless the team really steps up in front of him and helps block shots and keeps the puck away from him or players away from him, then he could be okay. But I mean, it's going to be a struggle.
I mean, that's a good point. You have an unproven backup. You have a goaltender who's toward the end of his career who is hoping to have an even 50-50 split, and you're not sure how much he's going to get relied on. And we saw last year when he was relied on a ton, it wasn't always great. So I think you're absolutely right. This could really be a coin flip between okay and not great. So I think you're absolutely right, Mariah.
It's so hard.
All right. Well, we are going to move into our quick fire segment. We're going to throw some questions at you, and I want you to answer in a sentence, 2, 3 at the most. But just pick your answer and give us a quick sentence or 2. All right. So let's start. 1 or 2 breakout stars for the Wild this upcoming season.
Rossi and Addison, and if Addison doesn't come up, Beckman.
All right.
We didn't mention Adam Beckman. He's going to be good, I think, eventually too. So
they need to make 5 lines instead of 4. I need a
some teams,
line
yeah. Other teams probably wouldn't like that, but some teams, what type of depth those teams have. But I definitely agree. Those are great choices. Okay, one player that needs to bounce back from last season.
Dumba.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It might be a little unfair with the injury, but
no, I mean, I think that's fairly fair. All right. Yeah. Who do you have for the Minnesota Wild's X Factor this season?
A guy we haven't mentioned, Matt Boldy.
Oh, Matt Boldy, yes.
Okay.
He gets forgotten about.
Oh, Boldy's really good. And he had what did he have last season? He had quite a few.
He set some rookie records. I don't recall them, but I know he beat Kaprizov in at least one or two, I think.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
It was a stacked Calder class last year, and he was like on any other year that didn't have he probably would have had a big chance of winning the Calder. That's for sure. But when you have Sider, Raymond, Lindell, that's just a few of them.
Are you saying the Wild could have had like back-to-back?
Zegras.
For the
Zegras. Yeah, Zegras. They could have. If that class wasn't as strong, they definitely could have. And I think Rossi could potentially be in that conversation this year, but there's quite a few big guys in that. Matty Beniers being biggest one. So, Maxi McTavish. So,
yeah.
There's a few. Okay, speaking about rookies, this moves in great into the next question. Pick one rookie or prospect that could surprise and make the roster out of training camp.
I hope I'm saying his last name right, but Sam Hedges?
Hedges?
I don't know how to say that. But I was a big fan of his because I actually went to St. Cloud State and watched him play in person. And then when he went to the Olympics, I'm a fan of his. I was like, I'm pretty sure he did. I literally just wrote that, but I like him, and it's gonna be hard because the Wild have so many top forwards, but if there's some opening, I could see him just hello.
Yeah.
All right. Is there a player that we have yet to mention that fans should be watching out for this season?
Connor Dewar.
Okay. All right. Love it.
Yeah, I heard his name quite a few times last. Yeah.
He's another one I like.
Yeah, I'm seeing another one I read a lot about, so I can tell. Okay, who will lead the team in scoring with the forwards?
Is there really any other option but Kaprizov?
Obviously. How about on defense?
I'm gonna say your favorite Spurgeon.
Yes, I can see that. Definitely see that.
All right. Pick one player you think will be traded before the deadline.
I don't have any other than Dumba. Even though I said he probably won't, but I really don't see them trading anybody.
Yeah.
And if they do, it would be him.
I can see that. Yeah, definitely. Dumba would be a big piece, I think, at the deadline if they did.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, ultimate question now. Where will they finish in the standings, and will they make the playoffs?
Yes to the playoffs.
Where will they finish?
Well, see, I had in the conference, so I did second behind the Abs.
Okay.
Overall,
yeah, that's what I mean. The league is
because I was like, overall,
you never know.
No idea, but yeah, second the conference is perfect.
Yeah, behind the Abs, because I still think the Abs are strong enough that it's going to be hard to beat them. They're not going to be the same as last season, but they're still a strong team.
Oh yes, yeah.
All right, let's finish off with one bold prediction or hot take for the Minnesota Wild in the 2022-23 season.
That they lead scoring in the NHL.
Ooh.
Oh, above some big teams.
That might be our hottest take yet. I like it. I
love it.
Dropping the heat bombs.
That's a good one. That
is a good one. That is a really good one.
All right. We will see. We will come back to these and see how it kind of goes with any of these things. So thanks, Mariah, for coming on. Before we let you go, want you to put on, we usually do our articles of the day on the podcast normally. We're not going to choose any this time, but you're going to choose one. Could be your own or one from the Wild team. Most people are choosing their own. So what do you got?
I did choose my own, and it was because I was being born and raised in Minnesota and currently still living here. I had to do this one because it was a favorite of mine. Wild become destination team for Minnesota-born players. And I talked about how they've signed Faber, Sammy Walker, they've got all these guys, Parrott, Henches. I hope I'm saying that name right. I feel so bad. Just a number of them. They've got Goligoski on the roster. They had Bukestad, like Minnesota-born players. Not to say we're better than anybody else, but we have a lot of talented players that come up through the high school, college ranks, and they're finally wanting to come and stay home instead of going off to other teams and being like, no, we don't want to come here. We're not good enough yet. But now with Kaprizov and all of them guys, it's like, oh, we have a chance here, so we want to stay here. And it's exciting to see all these guys. Like I said, I got to see Henches play in college, and it's exciting to see him now that he could potentially be wearing a Wild jersey down the road. So it was really fun to explore that and be like, hey, we have home players here.
Love it.
Yeah. Well, I read that article, and that was such a surprise point of how many you guys, Wild have on the team for Minnesota born, not just on the team, but coming up. So it's exciting to see that, because you add a lot more fandom too, for guys, players being their hometown. It's great. So that was a fun article to read. So definitely check that out.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Mariah, for coming on the show and lending your expertise on the Minnesota Wild and previewing the upcoming season, which is only a month and a half away. A little less than that, actually, because the first games are October 11th.
5 weeks, I think.
On my birthday, actually. So
hey, that's a great birthday gift to you.
Canucks don't play on that day, but they play on the 12th. But it's still, hockey will be on, so I'll be able to watch some. But thanks for coming on, and we'll be looking out for your articles. And of course, check out the other Minnesota Wild writers' articles. And you have a couple more now, which is great. So
yes, we have our full team again.
There you go. And you have a new guy too, who actually reached out to me, and he'll probably be on the podcast in the future. So looking forward to that. And of course, make sure you're checking out all the stuff on the hockeywriters.com, Morning Skate newsletter, and morningskate.io. That's coming out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday still, but it will come Monday to Friday once the season starts again too. So thanks for joining us. Another Hockey Writers podcast, 2022-23 season preview show. We will see you next time with another one.